what does it mean to future-proof the human resources industry, and why is it necessary? When it comes to future-proofing the world of HR, we tend to think of a continuation of the workforce, including the cultivation of the next generations. In our ever-changing corporate landscape, how do we leverage technology and evolving workplace dynamics to both foster workplace inclusivity as well as cultivate meaningful career development opportunities? These are questions that we will be taking on right now. So let's dive right in. Younger generations have distinct expectations and motivations compared to their predecessors. That's why it's important to have innovation in HR practices. So as seasoned experts in the field, Dino and Mukta, can you tell us more about shifts in workplace dynamics, such as multi-generational teams, how these shifts are affecting HR strategies, and what recruiting strategies you might have found useful for Gen Z talent, for instance?
For me, I work in corporate and investment banking business of Societe Generale in APAC. We are actually made up of 51% millennials in APAC, and we deal with, of course, different generations. For the younger generation, for us, we have to be a little bit more innovative. So what we did work on when we go to campuses, for example, I think the old tried and tested methods, they still work, but we worked on a VR tool where the students can come to our booth and then they can have a virtual reality taste of our office, for example, and the things that we do in Hong Kong. And we do feel that we attract a lot of people because there is more technology, which these people have grown up with. And for us as a bank, which is 160 years old, it's important to also show that we are, going forward in future and we are not just some old fuddy-duddy bank. So for me, technology is important because it does attract people, but it doesn't mean that we stop there, then onboarding, whether when they come to the organization, the day-to-day work, digitalization is definitely there because most of them are digital natives. And frankly, if we do not provide them the experience that they have in their personal life, they do tend to get disengaged. So for us, we try to do onboarding, which is much more digitalized, not completely, but much more. And then when they come into the organizations, the tools that we have, which most of the organizations also have, it's important to have that in the entire life cycle and not only at one point of time. So for me, from attraction to basically during the entire life cycle, how do we engage during the onboarding, the performance management, learning, for example, through different tools, the mode of delivery. It has to be something which is catering to different generations because we have 4 generations right now, whether it is, hybrid, whether it is completely remote, whether it is face-to-face. Again, it depends on, we have to cater to all of them. And for example, things like LinkedIn Learning, using AI, are we using it? How many people are actually taking part in that? And we do find that not only younger generation, we also have some other generations where people could have personality or the learning style, which is more attuned to, say, digital platforms. They would tend to do that. As an organization, we really need to do mix and match. I will not categorize things into, one generation versus another. What I'll say is more based on different personality learning styles and also the experience that people have in their personal life versus in the organization. So I don't know, Dino, if you have similar experience.
Absolutely, Mutka, similar experience. And what I can say is, considering this, say, new generations, we have experienced that it starts with revising your job requirements. I mean, basically, the copy and paste doesn't work anymore. You really need to, of course, embed what the digitalization world requests, but making sure that since the job posting, the hiring manager is absolutely, on board with the meaning also of the words you use in your basically your job requirements, because that's the first attracting factor. A second aspect is new generations are more attracted by the project you're offering them, by really the professional, I would say, path that you can offer them. And another aspect, for example, we're overcoming is compared to maybe just a couple of years ago, let's put it like this, just to not appear too old, it's really that what matters for them is what type of experience they will effectively do during your tenure with your company, which doesn't mean, again, compared to the past, we were also somehow expecting that, the so-called loyalty or people that you attract once will remain with you almost forever, or at least it's absolutely no longer the case. So you are also to be humble and aware of the fact that sometimes I use the expression intermittent talentship because it's really about what type of project. And so somehow your job description or your hiring process should be able also to describe, first of all, what you are offering them in terms of the project, more than you asking them, if they can do this or if they can do that. So it's a little bit, and that's a third aspect, a reverse process where I think we have all heard about the fact that it's more the talent today nowadays choosing, the company or choosing the employer rather than the opposite. So again, I think this requires a certain level of humility, making sure that we will be more starting from the hiring process in a listening mode, trying to match, the experience and the interest of the talents more than just telling what we expect them to do. In terms of the tooling, yes, of course, the tooling that Mukta has mentioned, we use, I do think that the hiring process is, or the hiring sector is one of those that is more beneficial of artificial intelligence or digital, tools. But if I may, what I have also observed is it's important, for example, to reintroduce the role play. Why we do that? So instead of the traditional, I ask question, you answer my question, and then somehow I assess if you have answered correctly, my expectation is really trying to put at least, the final candidates in a condition, in a situation which is the most, linked and close to what the real then experience and professional experience will be. So, for example, one of the things I am experiencing is creating a little bit of a mini work context already during, the interviewing phase where the talent or the candidate will meet with two or three of the key stakeholders that in any case they will be faced with during their professional experience. So in a certain sense to try to project a little bit, what it's going to be really working there. Other than having really an open kind of welcoming during even do the interview process. So not being hidden in terms of what your structure, what even though your workplace is, and of course being absolutely open and transparent in terms of the work flexibility. This is also something that we were not really used to do. We've been forced to do after COVID, but this is now something acquired, which of course cannot be ignored. So a mix of the things, and let me just close this first aspect, Adeline, saying as well. Of course, we talk about new generations, which is normal. I totally agree with Mukta, where it's not really about creating a category or a silo, because this is absolutely against the type of flexibility and openness that we just mentioned. But it is really about, since the beginning, creating the right generational mix, because I don't have a different solution more than making sure that you are able to value every generation, every kind of level, because otherwise, of course, this is going to be or risk to be another barrier that you're creating based on
Mm.
age, which somehow, of course, is unuseful other than being counterproductive in terms of the generational mix.
Thanks for that, Mukta and Dino. I like what both of you are saying, and actually, there's some overlap that I'm finding as well. It's not so much about the um, generational group trends or patterns, and in fact, we're talking about specific individual and human perspectives and needs. So we've talked about digitalization, we've talked about technology, but when we talk about future proofing, there are other trends as well. And for instance, there's the increase of remote and hybrid work models. So what are a few key trends that we can expect in addition to remote and hybrid work models in the future of work?
So maybe let me talk about this one. So I was we are present in different countries in APAC, and we were looking at some of the expectations of employees in different parts of the world, different parts of APAC for myself, for as part of my job. And what we saw is that this hybrid working, flexibility, the work-life fitment, as I like to call it, different countries has different needs. Employees in Australia, for example, they value it much more, and this is based on a recent survey by Michael Page, which was quite interesting. Whereas in China, it is salary comes first, compared to this. Uh, in Japan, also salary comes first compared to work-life balance. But as an organization, what we try to do is, because this has become quite important in the past few years, we do provide work from home, so 2 days at least, up to 2 days work from home in for most of our functions, because there are some functions where you need to be present in office all the time. So it is, I think, quite valued by the employees. Employees are appreciative of it, even though some of them don't use it all the time. So for example, when I see in my Hong Kong office, there are people who want to come to office, but because we have hot desking policy, so they have to work from home. So, but whereas in some others, like in Australia or maybe in Singapore, where maybe apartments are bigger, people would like to take advantage of this policy and be more productive, because we do see that productivity has not dipped because of people working from home. What we also make sure is that the managers are trained, or at least awareness is created on the trust factor, because if that is not there, I don't think any hybrid policy can work. If you have managers always wondering what the people are doing when they are not in office in front of them. So for us, I think that is important, that we have this flexibility, because people just like to have that choice, even if they don't exercise it. Also combined with, the leave policies that various organizations have. What is your maternity, paternity, adoption? And some companies even have pet leaves. But I think it's important that we are combining it together, or dependent leave, etc. People do value the flexibility that the organization gives them, and they may not use it, but it is there for them when it is required. So for me, I would say that it's an essential part. Even though some of the banks are going away from it, it has its own value, and it does add to the productivity of an organization. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Mukta. And actually, we have a comment from one of our audience participants, Arati. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Arati agrees that trust is very much required in the work culture, and even more so in Asian cultures, in fact.
Yeah.
Dina, would you have anything to add?
I'd say that we maintain the 2 days flexibility per week up to each individual. So it's not prescriptive, but we try to maintain it because we found that hybrid was, the best solution. So said, my view is that we've been forced by COVID to somehow increase our awareness of the need of autonomy that each individual has. And for me, continuing to keep on the hybrid model is also a sign of trust. This means that now that we are no longer, in a certain sense, in an emergency situation, because of course we've been forced to introduce the work from home kind of, maintaining it is a sign of trust that people can continue to use their judgment on when eventually they use, the work from home without having any particular prescription. So for me now it goes above and beyond just, the flexibility model, but it's also a distinct element of somehow trust that this can work.
Absolutely. So what are the pitfalls of workplace flexibility? We've talked about the advantages and the pros and how it's built on trust. Do you see any potential pitfalls, and how can this actually be addressed?
Um, for me, I would say that, like any other policy, there will always be few people who might, take advantage of it or abuse the policy. But it doesn't mean that just because of those few people, we do not have it for everybody else. It could be this. It could be like, if managers are micromanagers and the trust factor is not there, they can be quite painful for the employee. I do remember, one of my friend was telling me that her manager was basically, trying to see whether the on the messenger whether the thing is green, all the time, and every time she was away, it was like, okay, where are you, and that can be very painful. It's much more stressful than being present in person in front of the employee. So there could be those kind of things, but for me, I think the positives are much higher than the negatives. It's a question of how do you manage with trust, and also, are there any, if you're delivering, if your results are there, for me, it should not matter, whether the flexibility or whether you provide flexibility, and somebody is working from here, somebody is working from there, as long as it's result based and it's delivery focused.
I do believe that definitively positives are absolute. I don't want to think about any resistance from that perspective. And on the other
Yeah.
side, this has pushed a lot leaders and people leaders to adapt their style. So of course, like anything, they could be limits, but overall, it has to be respected.
Mm. Exactly. And Mukta, as you expressed, it's not just pitfalls of the flexibility, but to a certain extent, it's pitfalls of technology as well, how we can better survey on people now. So we've talked about trend and industry challenge predictions. I'd like to talk more about technology now. What emerging technologies, for instance, you mentioned AI, artificial intelligence, what would you say are some emerging technologies that are more likely now to have significant impact on the industry?
Well, what I can see, it really depends on the industry sectors. The more we become aware of these emerging technology, and AI, of course, is on the top of, I think, the mind of everyone. The more we become conscious. Let me just share a concrete example of where, for example, we are in Coima and what we're doing. I would divide this in two aspects. One aspect is how you use the technology really to evolve the business. Let me give you an example. We operate in the building sector and in the remote control of the building facilities. Now you can understand that applying artificial intelligence to this sector, and in particular, for example, through, of course, sensors, having the possibility to remote control any type of facility and feature of the technology is absolutely an economical and an industrial advantage. And this is really the evolution. Just think about, I don't know, regulating from distance your solar panels, or how energy is going to be, distributed in your building, for example, or how many people are accessing your building, and so on and so forth. So this is one aspect where of course, you cannot, of course, ignore it. You need to stay on top of the evolution. On the other side, there is also how technology can be, in a certain sense, interpreted and can be assimilated by your workforce. And there, what I'm starting observing is, of course, there is the curiosity of understanding how this can apply to your own work. So, for example, I have many people that just start exploring what ChatGPT is. But there, of course, just putting a query in the ChatGPT box and getting, I don't know, the some answer, the structure of a presentation doesn't mean being technology advanced, and doesn't mean that you have effectively understood or understood. So on that side, I do believe that organizations that are particularly sensitive should, on one side, leverage, of course, why technology is going to be an advantageous, aspect applied to their business, applied to their operations, and through that way, possibly, form, help their employees to also use the technology. In short, we should just be careful about thinking that using ChatGPT box is corresponding to, okay, I have a technological, advanced workforce.
Absolutely, Dino. And Mukta, how about you? Anything to add about emerging technologies?
Yeah, for us, in banking sector, we are all based on technology. So work-wise, there is we can't survive without it. From a HR point of view, like I said, I think, and Dino mentioned that recruitment is a definite. The most use cases you will have, of using technology, AI, is in recruitment. So starting from there and then making sure that within the organization, when people join, how can we make sure that we are using, and we are already using, as I said, in our learning management systems, the use of AI, which really throws up ideas about what people should be learning more based on, their past behavior and what their objective is. We also have, as part of our IT department, we have a sub department which is really testing the use of AI for different departments. And for HR, for example, we did use this for as a predictive model for looking at various criteria for which impact attrition, and really then figuring out a list of people who are high risk according to this model. And we tested it. It was the first cut was 80% actually quite accurate. We do need to do it now, and we will see how it is, because I think why it was useful, and I think it is useful for us as HR, is because from that list of people, the high risk people, we tried to then look after them maybe a little bit more because they are high risk and our talents, who are there, and try to look at it during our compensation review, but maybe more career interviews, and giving a little bit more, tender loving care kind of thing. But for me, the best use for HR is in the predictive analytics, I would say. And I'm quite hopeful that we are trying out certain things, not only for attrition, but also seeing trends about what people want in their career, and also looking at some of the recruitment trends. So this is all in progress, and I see huge benefits of using AI into it. Generative AI, we are looking at it, but it's in very initial stages for us, and we want to see how it can help us further to reduce workload, but also come up with more, I would say, interesting and creative ideas. But it's yet to be seen. But I really am very hopeful that this will help us in human resources, in taking decision, and also in creating things which are much more powerful for the management to take decisions. Yeah.
That's definitely really interesting, Mukta. Thanks for sharing, Mukta and Dino, about your respective organizations. So now we've heard about predictive analytics for the HR department. We've heard about individual adoption of generative AI technology such as ChatGPT. I'm very curious to hear both your thoughts on this. What about organization-wide adoption of technology? I know, Dino, for instance, you also have dealt with change and transformation. What are some best practices that you can advise for, let's say, organization-wide adoption of technology?
Well, maybe I can, Mutka, I can say something about that. Uh, Let me be very, very simple. What's in it for me, and how this is going to, impact my contribution to the success of the organization. These are the two aspects that, in my view, are valid at all levels, from eventually the sponsor and the CEOs of the company that need to pay a real attention on not just being fascinated by the trend and the fact that, hey, we need to have, a certain dose of technology across our organization, but making sure that this has a direct link to, of course, productivity or some key indicators in terms of the success of adoption, and taking the employees along the way, making sure that there is a huge effort in communication, there is a huge effort. This is absolutely strategic in terms of making everyone understanding why we are doing this and what is in it for them, in order not only, of course, to possibly improve their contribution, but also how this is going to collectively possibly improve the financial results, is possibly impacting the KPIs and the performance KPIs of the company, because this is also one way, or probably the principal way of then working on adoption, because we know that you can have the best program of the world. It can be also efficient from a design perspective, but if you're lacking adoption, any type of program is going to fail. So that's what my experience tells me.
Absolutely agree, Dino. Especially with the "what's in it for me." That's a really popular phrase for us to bear in mind as agents of change and transformation. And totally agree with what you're saying, that adoption is a journey. Mukta, really would like to hear your thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, no, I agree with Dino, and I think he said it all. Because for company-wide adoption, like what Dino mentioned, I think it's important to see how is it contributing to the business, and again, for us also, because it's an investment, of time, effort, and money from the organization side. So the aim is also to see whether whatever the employees come up with, whether it is beneficial for the organization. We used to have one program where we asked employees to raise their hand to do like a 6-month kind of innovation stint, where they could work on an idea that they have for some department, submit their project, can work on it for 6 months and then come back to their own job. And it was a few years ago, and I thought it was a very good idea. We have not continued it, but again, the aim was to have something which is to promote innovation, to have employees who have the innovation bug, to do something new, while they still have the job, because you still need the money, for your livelihood, and then can have that thing, and it's beneficial to the organization also. So again, I think it was something which was quite interesting for us. We don't have it anymore, but as I mentioned earlier, in the sub team of the IT, where we are asking departments to come up with some use cases where we can save headcounts, workload, the turnaround time, etc., and then the company would be willing to invest in it. So we are trying to kill, I mean, many birds with one stone, is to really ignite the desire of innovation, in people, and also help the organization. So it's mutually beneficial to all. Yeah.
That sounds like a fantastic program, actually. The whole concept of allowing everyone to still be innovative, but of course keep their day jobs. So we do have a comment talking about emerging technologies. We do have a comment from Arati again, who says, "I feel it should be a top-down approach." Taken by the organization as long as results are shown. HR plays a vital role in being open and allowing employees to approach them with concerns. I think it quite echoes what both of you have been saying as well. Talking about technology and organization-wide adoption of technology, we've also talked about data analytics. What are some other ways that Dino and Mukta, you are both currently preparing, some other ways that you are both currently preparing your own HR departments for future challenges and opportunities, and in that way, future-proofing them? Perhaps, Dino, would you like to?
Well, from that perspective, of course, evolution goes for everyone, including HR, and maybe we've been perceived for many years as a little bit lagging, from that perspective. And I do believe that never like now, the shift or simply the evolution of the job of the HR function can play an important role. It starts with being conscious of it. Again, humility, because let's be honest, most of the time, I mean, the HR functions, generally speaking, are somehow, of course, like they should be at the service of the leadership, at the key, of course, decision. Rarely they are a little bit ahead or pushing for innovation. Now there are again two aspects that I consider. One is you cannot avoid it, in the sense that from of course your performance system to your learning system to your and you should also work to in a certain sense be embracing the technology evolution, because simply because you cannot ignore it. I mean, you cannot continue to do HR in my view without the right technology. And the second aspect is your workforce in any case is requiring it. Just think about learning. Mutka mentioned it. How was learning maybe 10 years ago? It was like pushing, and some of the most evolutive organization, G was one of them, of those, created the plateau, the learning plateau, the first, what we call today platform, where in a certain sense, people could go and find a certain offering of learning's opportunity. This was very ahead and innovative for the time. Today it's again it's the talent that want to do not only the type of learning or trainings that are technically necessary to continue to keep upskilled with what his or her job requires, but wants also to use the time they spend in your organization by continuing to forming themselves, possibly, and that's for me also a pretty recent concept, the employability. We didn't used to talk about this term some few years ago. Employability is another concept where, in a certain sense, you continue to be attractive and you continue to retain your talent because you offer them the possibility to continuously learn, to continuously form themselves, most of the time for their next experience. And again, hard to say, but you must admit that they can use you to form, to quit you in a certain sense, if I may be a little bit, provocative, just to prepare themselves for the next round. So all this requires the right integration of the system. So today, what I'm doing for my team is pushing them to understand the interconnectivity of these systems, from the hiring to the onboarding, to the learning, to the performance evaluation system, of course, to the reward system. All this cannot be any more fragmented, but they should be technology, in a certain sense, is what one day we were calling, employee life cycle. Okay, today it's technology life cycle that drives, of course, the employability of the people that you have in your organization.
Absolutely agree with that. Mukta?
Yeah, completely agree with Dino. So maybe in addition, I would add that what I'm doing for my team is on the data literacy part, because this is something which is quite important. And not only because we are a bank, I think all organizations as HR, we do need to be both science and art. We have to have both, and statistics, facts, the linkage, the connectivity between the various elements, as Dino mentioned, is quite important. And for me, I think this is what is something which is maybe a little bit lacking, and this is what I push for. The other is on the well-being part of it, which of course most of the HR people realize, but not everybody. But I think also, how do we embed it in our day-to-day things, and it's not something which is standalone. Again, the interconnectivity, which was mentioned earlier. And finally, I think on the resilience part, so I mean, there are trainings available which are there, but for me, the best way of people to learn in the team about resilience is to be in hot water themselves, and then really find solutions when situations are vague. And I think the pandemic time was a great time where we all learned to be resourceful, learn to be creative in finding solutions where there were no precedents, and for me, these are the things which will also help us in future when we have more AI, more technology. The human factor will still remain, and this will future proof the HR team. So this is what I'm not pushing, but I'm helping the team, to grow in these areas, including myself, because we all get obsolete in our skills. So we need to also continuously learn this. Like, for example, the predictive analytics was new for me. So with our data scientist team, which we have in our offshoring center in Bangalore, so I also learned quite a lot because they're so good at it. So we need to continue learning, and continuous learning is an important factor for all of us in HR.
Thank you for your insights, Mukta, and Dino as well. Thank you for all of your insights. Actually, I would like to ask one final question that I know so many insights is so hard to sum up everything, but my question is, if you could come up with a recipe for organizations, not just your organization, but organizations in general, called future-proofing HR, what would be your three main ingredients? I think, Mukta, you started to talk about that a little bit already.
Sorry, I jumped the gun.
No, that was good. You're preparing the recipe. So what would it be, to sum up, if you can, just distill it to three main ingredients that you think are really important for a dish called future-proof HR? What would they be?
Well, three main ingredients. That would sum up also this great conversation. I would go with the three T. Technology. Technology is the glue. Technology is data is inevitable. So technology, talent, in the sense that we are all talent. We just take also humility and listen to our talent, and possibly transform our organization in a talentship hub. And third is trust. This came up as well, because in my view, without trust, in all respect, we discussed about flexible working, we discussed about remote. Trust is, I would say, Adeline, my third key ingredient.
It's a great recipe, wonderful recipe. Mukta, I'm sure yours will be great too.
Yeah, I don't think I can match Dino with the three T's. But I do think that in addition, we should also and it's not new, but again, really knowing the business, as HR, and being changing ourselves and adapting to the changing scenario in the business and the policies that we have within HR is very, very important. For me, if we don't do that, there's no credibility as a HR function. So I would add this to Dino's three T's. Yeah.
Another great recipe. Thank you so much, Dino and Mukta. And now our floor is open for Q&A. Actually, the chat box has been buzzing a little bit already, thanks to the really insightful conversation that's been happening. So, uh, Vadyanathan asks actually, what are your views on use of ATS, application tracking system, and what is being done to make it perform intelligently, given the volume of applicants? Mukta, would you like to take
Well,
it?
I can
Dino, yes,
I can
please.
go, yeah, I can go and say that yes, absolutely. I find it absolutely necessary. We have implemented it even though in a smaller organization. So just to say that it's not necessarily a question of volume. Um, uh, so other than systematizing, I would say the application, I find it absolutely useful because it gives also a sense of responsibility to the hiring manager, who tends normally to have everything served, and then the curriculum already screened and in a certain sense. So maybe think about using it to involve earlier also your hiring manager and making sure that since the job requirement that absolutely must come from them, we are here, of course, to support, to do everything, but for me, the ownership of the hiring is the task number one of any people leader. What at the end of the day makes the difference between individual contributor and a people leader is that the people leader has the golden aspect to be able to recruit people, to form a team, to be, and so it starts from there. And the ATS tool, it's also a tool that should push them to be more selective, to understand and to improve continuously their hiring skills.
I completely agree. I mean, we all use, and it's not new. ATS has been there for a long time. I think for me, we use it all the time. The important part is, as Dino mentioned, is the ownership by the managers, and the other thing is also the bias, which sometimes can creep up in ATS. And how do you make sure that the when you are setting it up and the questions that you have are sort of unbiased, so like the kind of questions that you ask related to diversity, for example. So we did add some of it and modified a bit, so that we are not filtering out some of the profiles because of the keyword search, which is part of the ATS system. um, for me, I think already AI is being incorporated in many ATSs which are there. But again, as I said, my one cautionary point will be on the biasness, because I think there are a lot of studies which have said that when you are using AI, sometimes it is basically biased based on the person who has created it. So that's something which we need to look at. Yeah.
And we actually have another question right here from Jin Kiet. What are your views on demonstration or evidence of skills versus paper qualifications and certifications? Do you see more emphasis on skills versus qualifications?
I think for the paper qualification, as I think all of us have seen it, is more important when you are fresher, or when you are in a entry level kind of position, because there's nothing much to go by apart from this, plus maybe the aptitude test that some of the companies may have. But of course, after a certain time, what we feel is that when we have interns, or people who do some assignments with us, the students, that's a better way of assessing them instead of the paper qualification that they have. But finally, for lateral placement, it's the skill level which is much more important. I know that we did have some part. We are a French based, French origin organization. So there was at one point of time, people from the same schools will hire. I know it's the same in India. Sometimes when you are from the same university, same school, there is a chance of getting it, or organize or institutions with a higher ranking, they are the ones which get entry. Yeah. We in APAC, we are actually not doing that. We are looking more at the skills and the aptitude for freshers, but for lateral, it is, for me, it's the experience that they have. So, I mean, at least personally, I don't place much importance for this. There is an element, but beyond a point, I think for me it is irrelevant. You will have people from the best institutes not able to adjust, and you can have people from whichever tier institute doing very well and being very successful. So but I will not say that this is 100% there for all the managers. There's still some bias which is there, and I'm not sure how to get rid of it. It's just the reality. Yeah.
Bias is definitely difficult to easily get rid of. So, Dino, anything to add?
Totally aligned with what Mutka said. And interestingly enough, that we're talking about hiring maybe new talent, etc., and the word bias recurs, and the certification or the school or the provenience should not be a bias at all. While of course that's the barrier we should overcome instead of continuously to create this dichotomy.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. We have one more question inside the chat box from Julie. What are your views around multi-generational workforce management in the face of aging populations in many developed countries? Because Gen Zs are very different from millennials and Gen Xs. This goes back to the beginning of our conversation, actually. Thanks for that. So, Mukta,
Yeah.
would you like to kick us off?
Yeah, it's a very relevant question, and this is something which we are also grappling with. As I mentioned, we have 4 generations, and I guess all the organizations have 4 generations, and there are definitely conflicts and different ways of working. I would say. So for us, what we did was we have a cross-generational network as part of our diversity ERGs. We do a lot of awareness sessions which are related to this topic, because it's awareness about how different generations behave, work, and what are the things which are maybe more important versus not important. Now, again, I think that is one of the thing. Also, what we try to do is we look at some cross projects which have different generations. I think earlier it was based on how we can who is relevant to the project, but we did create some forcefully where we do have some cross generational interactions. So it could be part of say a leadership program for junior people, where their sponsors are of a different generation, and when they interact with each other and work on a project together, then they really come to understand what other person is thinking. And we have a lot of people from different generations coming and saying that, okay, it was valuable because they did not they were surprised that the other generation thinks like that. So I think we have to create these kind of opportunities where different generations have to talk to each other and try to understand each other, instead of just assuming things, that somebody in my team is like this. Maybe one example I can tell you is that when we have some of the investment bankers or corporate bankers who in their younger time, they were working till late night and on Saturdays and Sundays, and their managers were really slogging them. They sometimes tell me, oh, but today's generation, people are not as rigorous as we were. They don't want to work; they want to have a work-life balance. And really, I have to tell them that it's a different generation. They have been brought up in a different generation, and what's wrong in having a work-life fitment or harmony? There's nothing wrong about it. Just because you went through it in a different environment doesn't mean that they have to go through it. They can still deliver. Again, I think these things are still there, and we do need to address it. We also have what we call peer coaching groups. So like some of us in my team, where we are coaches, we also do that, where managers sometimes bring up these topics, to talk about how to handle this kind of a situation. And I think it's really interesting, because then other managers say that, oh, I have the same kind of an issue. So we talk about it, and when we try to sort of dispel some of the myths that people might have. For me, it's continuous education, and it's more awareness and education right now than actually, taking some concrete actions, because it's a new topic, and this is something which we are tackling in this way. It for me, it will continue for some time.
Definitely. Dino, anything to add to that?
I may just say that again, let me be simple. It is what it is, in the sense that we also have to recognize that, say, older generations have been successfully creating their career based on a different style, and it's hard, or sometimes probably also totally unuseful to try to change that. What we could do, all the things that say Mutka, but on top of everything, in my view, is you need somehow, and the leadership, of course, needs somehow, number one, to recognize it, because if you force in one or in another direction, it will be, in any case, to me, unproductive. Either you force the older to adapt to the younger, or vice versa. But you should have somehow the courage to create some common culture where, of course, the differences is recognized. And of course, you need to have the courage to evolve your culture. That's the only way to somehow, without pushing or forcing, having people, I would say, naturally trying to adapt or do their best to flex, without pretending that they will just shift their mind. Because for our X generation, it's going to be still a element of value if he or she stays, late at night, or they will continue to tell you, but during the interview, she told me that in any case, she has interest for theater, so maybe once a week she needs to, go home earlier, etc. That's not something I would expect to hear. You need to overcome this and create a culture where those things are normal, even though, of course, if he wants to stay late at night, he can, but this is not going to be necessarily a distinctive element.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think it's more the respect for and acceptance of each other's style, which is important. Yeah.
Definitely. It's all about finding common ground and mutual respect. So now we have 3 minutes left. We have one last question that we will take from audience participants. From SM, what are the ways or means you would suggest to use to qualify skills for experienced or lateral hires?
Sorry, maybe can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Sure. What are the ways that you would suggest to use to qualify skills for lateral hires?
Okay. Qualify means how do you hire? Lateral hires, is it?
Yes, for lateral hires, for more experienced hires.
Okay. For us, we actually don't do any test for them. Ideally, I would love to, but they're too expensive, the assessment centers and all those things. We do have, we have, of course, our panel of interviews. So actually, we do have quite a lot of them, maybe around 5 to 6. And I'm not sure this is the most efficient one, but we have matrix organization and multiple stakeholders. The other thing that we are starting to do is culture and conduct interviews, which really is by a person who is not the manager or HR, but somebody who is volunteering as a culture and conduct interviewer to really see from a unbiased picture whether they have the right, the conduct issues are not there, or the culturally whether there is a fitment. Now, I'm not saying that we need to find people who are exactly the same as we are, but will they be able to work in that environment where there are certain things are quite specific. We are just starting that, but I think it's quite important, especially for us as a regulated industry, where we need to make sure that there is fit and proper, and we when we hire the person, is the right person. I mean, we can never be sure till the person comes and joins and performs, but at least we reduce the percentage of failure or misfitment.
That does make a lot of sense. Thanks for that. And now we are 1 minute away from the end of our session. So thank you everyone for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time to participate in our dialogue, and it's been really a lot of fun. Please give a round of applause to our guests, Mukta Arya and Dino Caprioni, joining us from Hong Kong and Italy. Thank you so much for being here, Dino and Mukta. We
Thank
really
you.
enjoyed the conversation.